Hey children, it's me again, back with another tale of my youth. Well, wait, don't turn it off yet. I'm pretty sure you haven't heard this one. It's about a woman I met back when I was 19, 20 years old. Now, I can remember just what she looked like, and I can still kind of hear the sound of her voice, but funny, I just don't remember her name. Yeah, maybe it'll come to me. Anyway, it was the mid 60s, which is basically when what most people call the 60s were just getting started. It was one Kennedy down, one to go, and the hippies still resented being called hippies, if you can imagine that. Me, I was still doing my depressive beatnik poet routine. Yeah, I know. I never exactly totally quit that now, did I? Oh, yeah, the story. Well, back then there was an arcade just off Times Square where you played games like skee ball and pokerino. There were no video games. Hell, Pac-Man wouldn't be invented for another 15 years. And pinball had been illegal in the city since the 30s when Mayor LaGuardia dumped the slots into the river. But if you went all the way to the back of the arcade, you would find the ticket booth for Hubert's Museum and Flea Circus under a LaGuardia era sign that showed little cartoon fleas dressed in little costumes doing circus acts. The admission fee was a quarter. Now, I never saw the flea circus, and neither did anybody else I knew who ever found his way down to Hubert's. And I say down to Hubert's because it was in the basement under the arcade. Just the same, even without a flea circus, I still loved Hubert's Museum. It had that sleazy, kind of surreal, carny atmosphere you see in old Twilight Zone episodes. You know, where the mechanical fat lady laughs, ha ha ha, ha ha ha, and then they zoom in on that evil clown face. Of course, one of the things I liked about it was that it featured acts that was so completely third rate. There was a tattooed lady who had to be in her 70s. She'd come out on her little stage wearing her robe and being all coquettish, doing a patter about circus life and her late husband, the tattooed man. Then she'd finally slip out of her robe, and you could hardly tell what the tattoos were supposed to be because they were half hidden in the wrinkles. Well, at that point she was wearing a two-piece satin showgirl suit that pretty much left everything to the imagination, which was probably a good thing. But she had postcards for sale for an extra quarter, which supposedly showed her naked. I don't remember anyone ever buying one. Then the guy who was supposed to be Hubert, a black guy, gold tooth, sequin tuxedo, would lead a little crowd of customers to the next little stage to see the next performer. I can remember a guy who played the musical wine glasses, a girl who'd won some twisting contest out in Prospect Park. One who made a real impression on me was a guy whose hands had been amputated. His act was tying and untying his necktie with his stumps. Then on the next stage, Hubert might wheel out his electric chair, which was a Van de Graaff generator just like in junior high school science class. He'd get some tourist girl from the Midwest to sit in it, and he'd make her hair stand on end and a light bulb light up in her mouth, and she'd giggle like crazy. The big act in those days, the finale, was Hezekiah Trambull's The Jungle Creep. Hubert would turn on a tape of jungle drumming that sounded like it was straight from a Johnny Weissmuller Tarzan movie, and this incredibly skinny little old black man would jump out and dance around. He had a bone through his nose, and he was wearing a fake leopard skin, and his hairdo probably came from Hubert's electric chair. So he'd roll his eyes and shake all over and kind of scuttle around with his knees going in opposite directions. Then he'd suddenly jump at one of the tourist girls, and she'd cower into her boyfriend's arms. In retrospect, the whole thing was kind of racist, but it was still amusing. And so the main show would be over. But For an additional quarter, you could see the special adults only show in the back room, The Exotic Dancers. One night I decided to give it a try. 5 or 6 men, including me, paid our quarters and went into this darkened room. One guy was a Hasidic Jew, probably from Williamsburg. The black coat and hat, the long beard, the curls hanging from his sideburns, the works. Anyway, we all went up to a rail about 6 feet from the stage to wait for the first dancer. The Hasid, though, kept running to the back of the room and peeking out the door like he thought somebody he knew might show up and find him there. I really don't remember the first dancer at all. Basically, she was a stripper, probably left over when somebody had tried to revive burlesque a year or two before that. Anyway, light kept shining into the dark room, and sure enough, the Hasidic guy was still running back and forth from the rail to the door. Up to the rail, ogle the girl, back to the door, peek out and see if anyone's coming, over and over. I wonder who he thought was going to catch him there. Well, the second act was the snake dancer, an attractive black woman about 30 years old. So she takes out the boa constrictor and starts dancing. And the Hasid stops running back and forth and flattens himself against the back wall. The man really didn't like snakes. After her first dance was over, the snake dancer wanted one of us to hold my little baby, as she called it, that is the boa, while she danced with the python, which was much bigger. So I let her drape the boa around me, and she told me to walk around so everybody could pet it. Well, when I got to the Hasid, he lets out a little yelp and runs out the door, across the basement, and up the stairs. He looked like he might run all the way back to Brooklyn. Then, when the dance with the python was over, the other guys left, and I was still there with the boa. And I stayed to talk to her while she packed up the snakes. Mostly we talked about snakes, but she told me I was kind of cute, and I asked her if she wanted to go down to the village for a drink. She couldn't that night, but she gave me her number. Maybe her name was Iris, I'm not sure. Well, we went out a couple of times. Once to a coffee house where I played sometimes. Once to a jazz club where I like to hang out. I don't remember what we talked about. We didn't do much talking. I guess I wasn't all that interested in other people back then. Just kind of accumulating experiences, you know? And, of course, showing up at a couple of my regular hangouts with a good-looking older black woman was, well, you understand. No, it wasn't Iris. I don't remember what it was. And I never asked how she wound up living alone on the Lower East Side with 2 big snakes and dancing at Hubert's museum at night. I wonder if she had kids. She looked like she might have had kids. And what happened to the kids, if she had any? And whatever prompted her to go out with me? Well, those days are gone, and Hubert's is gone, and my youth is gone, and I'm turning into one of those old guys who keeps talking about the old days. Could be worse. Hezekiah Trambles was probably well into his 60s back then, and he was still hopping around in a freak show. No, it wasn't Iris. Maybe something like that. I don't know.